This is Mr. Garrett Wester. He's here today to give us a short presentation on a different type of diversity. You know, our week this week has been based on the different type of diversities in the classroom. So I want y'all to give him his full attention. If he asks you questions, try to answer them to the best of your ability, and maybe we can learn something from him.
All right, thank you. Like you said, my name is Garrett Wester, and today I'll be sharing my Unity and Diversity talk. Short note before I get started, I was planning on doing a Joe Bowler book, so you might have written that down and you might be expecting me to do a Joe Bowler diversity talk. This is actually Herbert Cole. I had a conflict with the Joe Bowler book, so this is I Won't Learn From You by Herbert Cole. Okay, so like I said, Herbert Cole, he was born in 1937 and grew up in the Bronx of New York, and he was actually born into a Jewish household, which I found actually particularly interesting because, like I said, he was born in 1937, which is right before World War II. So that means he grew up, he had like a Jewish upbringing through World War II, so that gives him sort of a different perspective than what otherwise like normal American children would experience. Yeah. So Herbert Cole also, he studied at mathematics and philosophy at Harvard University, and also later studied philosophy at Columbia University. He began his career as a teacher at New York City Public Schools. As something apparently he dreamed all his life of doing. And he's most known for his criticisms of Western education, and him being an advocate for alternative education. And he is still teaching today. So one of the glaring themes from the book, and I thought it was so enlightening. I'm not really a reader, but I actually really did enjoy this read. And the big theme that I got from it is something called not learning. It's kind of confusing at first, but stick with me and I hope you'll understand. Not learning being the conscious act of purposefully not learning material. It's not that you're incapable of learning. It's not that you're a problem child, that you have behavioral problems. It's that somebody chooses to not learn something. And a quote from the book that I hope helps your understanding of the term. It says, "No failure is possible since there has been no attempt to learn." And what that's saying is, a lot of times teachers misunderstand when a student doesn't perform well on tests, or they don't grasp what the content is, and they think that either they're not capable of learning it, or they're just not very intelligent, or they have behavioral problems, when actually it could just be the child not interested and doesn't think that that's important for him or her to learn. So like this was a totally new concept to me. It kind of blew my mind a little bit. And then Herbert Cole actually shared one of his experiences dealing with this in his book. So there was this young boy going through kindergarten. So he's learning how to read, and he throws a tantrum every time he's told to do this reading assignment, or, we're going to work on reading. So he throws a tantrum, and the teacher just kind of lets him pass. They don't want to deal with the behavioral problems, so they let him pass with it. And then he gets into first grade, same thing. Throws a tantrum whenever he's required to read. And then he gets to second grade. Herbert Cole is teaching this class. And so he assigns the class to read their books individually, at their desk. And he notices that this boy kind of just puts his book off to the side. So he's like, okay, I don't think this kid has behavioral problems. I mean, he doesn't give me any problems other than when we try to read. I don't think this kid has intellectual problems. I think he is smart enough to be able to read. So he had to come up with a way to get the child to engage in reading without getting him to throw a tantrum. So what he did was he kind of pulled him to the side to not embarrass him in front of his fellow students, because the kid's known as the bad boy, So he wants him to uphold his reputation, make him feel comfortable, but he pulls him aside and helps him read. He reads with the child. So the child had never gained a foundation in reading, and so he was completely incapable at the moment in second grade. He was not a good reader. And then Herbert Cole kind of remediated that. He worked with him one-on-one, made sure he felt comfortable, and helped him to gain reading skills. So, kind of sticking with that idea of reading, and I think a student not being interested in reading in kindergarten, I feel like that's actually pretty common. Like, I feel like in kindergarten, I probably wasn't that interested in reading. I probably didn't think that was that important to me. So that's probably actually pretty common. Students probably choose to not learn reading at a pretty high rate. So a few statistics: 50% of adults cannot read a book written at an 8th grade level. This is U.S. 45 million adults are functionally illiterate and read below 5th grade level. And when we look at, back at the time of the story that I just gave you about Herbert Cole, they didn't do Common Core. But the Common Core standard currently for 2nd grade is they are to be able to read and comprehend literature, including stories and poetry in grades 2 through 3 text complexity, band proficiently, with scaffolding is needed at the high end of the range. So my point in saying that is this child that Herbert Cole was scaffolding, I guess you could say, he wasn't able to read at the Common Core standards for 2nd grade. So what Herbert Cole did was, kind of pulled him aside and made sure he felt comfortable. It wasn't that the boy was incapable. The boy was smart. He just didn't have the foundation because he wasn't interested in kindergarten. Okay, so how does this relate to your content area? I know not everybody's going to be a reading teacher or English teacher. So let's think about it. For the science teachers, imagine you are teaching, what is it, 9th grade biology? I think so. And you are given the curriculum of teaching the theory of evolution. So that's the plan. But imagine you have a child in your class who is particularly religious and completely disagrees with the theory of evolution. So they zone you out. They choose to not learn the theory of evolution. You got to think about how you're going to combat that. That's something that you need to be prepared for. And then in social studies, let's say the lesson is about Civil War. That's the topic you're going over. But we got a good old country boy in the class who was brought up to know that it is not Dr. Martin Luther King's day, it is Robert E. Lee's birthday. Or that, the Confederacy that's the stuff, or the South is going to rise again. So when we go over Civil War, that child probably isn't too open to what the textbooks are saying about Civil War. They're probably going to shut out and choose to not learn what it is you have to say. And then mathematics, my content area, we're going to be going over Pythagorean theorem. A squared plus B squared equals C squared. But let's say there's this girl in there, she's like, when am I going to use this? Like, that doesn't relate to me at all. So she chooses that she's not going to learn it because it's not important to her. So it even goes beyond the classroom. I actually have a personal experience here of me choosing to not learn something. So one day, my mom leaves the house and she gives me, my brother, and my sister a list of chores to do. So I got to clean the bathroom, I got to rake the leaves, and I have to make my bed. And I do all that stuff by the time she gets back, and then she comes back and checks all that we've done. And she goes to my bed and it's done wrong. I didn't make my bed right. So she goes in there and fixes it for me. And at that moment, I decided not to learn how to make my bed, because I knew my mom was going to make it for me. So I chose to not learn. It's not that I was incapable of making my bed. It's just that I'm not interested in it. I know my mom's going to make it for me, so I'm not going to learn how to do it. And then, so, what will I do to kind of incorporate what I've learned about not learning? Starkville has about a 59% math proficiency as compared to 60% for Mississippi statewide. And that kind of makes me think, what percentage of those students that aren't proficient in math how many of those are the kids that chose to not learn something? It's not, like I said, it's not that they're not capable, but how many of those students are the ones that said that's not important to me? So, what I want to do in my math class is teach everything that we're going over. We're going to teach why we need to know this. Because I remember being in class and students would raise their hand and be like, why do I need to know this? So that's what I would make sure they have a foundation of, why this is important. And then, so say the Pythagorean theorem, teach a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Well, that helps you calculate height of certain, in certain instances. Or that helps you calculate distance. And that can be really helpful in like short time situations. And then, like I said, I thought the book was fantastic and really enlightening, but there were a few criticisms that I had. Herbert Cole does not offer much of a solution to not learning, just to be open-minded and find a way to gather the student's interest, like he did with that student that couldn't read in 2nd grade. He pulled him to the side and made him realize, like, okay, I'm still going to let you be cool in front of your friends. I'm not going to let your friends know that you don't know how to read. I'm going to remediate you in this. So I think that's the point he's trying to get out, is just like somehow gain their interest, make them feel that it's important to learn. But in the end, I kind of got the feeling that Herbert Cole kind of just accepts that some students will just choose not to learn stuff. Sometimes you can't remediate that. You can't make a student want to learn something. It's kind of like the saying, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. So we can't force a student to learn if they're just completely disinterested. And then the second criticism, I thought the book was a bit far-fetched sometimes. Everything that I've talked about so far, it just made total sense to me. But then he kind of related it to racism and sexism and about how using history can be offensive to women, so we should call it herstory, and stuff like that. That I understand the viewpoints. Perhaps some of you agree with it. I just thought it was a little bit far-fetched. But again, like I said, overall I thought it was a fantastic read, and I thought it was really thought-provoking to think about students choosing to not learn instead of being incapable of learning. And that's something that we need to be prepared for in our class. And we need to know how to reach those students. So I think that's all I got. Yeah.
Did you have a reference slide on there?